welcome, Marwa. I'm so excited to chat with you. I get to chat with you all the time, but not in this capacity. So thanks for being on the Yoga Magic podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited as well.
So listeners, Marwa's been helping me a lot over the last several months in, I think sometimes just reining me in a little bit. I love to try all the things, all of the wellness hacks, biohacks, whatever it is. And you are so good at asking the right questions and bringing really grounded self-care wellness practices right in front of us. So thank you in advance.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
So I'd love for you to share with listeners your journey to becoming a health coach, and maybe what is a health coach for listeners that aren't sure what that means.
Yeah. So I love this question. I love to talk about it. So I'm glad that you started off with this. So a health coach is, the way I like to tell my patients and clients is, a health coach is someone who holds your hand on your health journey. And that means a lot of different things. So one of the most important is the support, right? The support that you get, the space that you get to, express how you feel, the frustrations that you're experiencing. You get to celebrate your wins, talk about all the good things that are happening. So there's just so much that goes into that whole support piece and holding space for people. I think that's a really, really important part of the whole process. But then also another really important thing about a health coach is helping people identify what their goals are and why they're important to them. Because a lot of times I think we do know what our goals are for the most part, but we don't really think about why we want to do certain things, right? And I think until you make that connection, it's really hard to stick to your goals and make progress. So that's another really important area that we kind of focus on is, why are you doing what you're doing? What's motivating you? Why is it important to you? And then from there, we kind of talk about, actionable steps. What are some things you can do that work for you in your lifestyle and your circumstances? And it's a very individual thing, right? Because everyone's so different. So that's something I really enjoy is being able to work with people on different levels and, trying to really cater to what works best for them. Because if we don't do that, then how are we going to make progress? If we're trying to do something that someone else is doing, it might not necessarily work for us. So kind of figuring out what that thing is or what those things are. And then the huge piece is also accountability. So having someone to kind of be, held accountable, they hold you accountable, they check in with you and your progress, trying to figure out, are these things working for you? Are there any changes that need to be made? Or even circumstances change, life happens, kind of going with those ebbs and flows and figuring out, how do I navigate? And then I know I'm going to be talking to this person and they're going to hold me accountable. So that's really sometimes the missing piece in, progress. So that's in a nutshell what a health coach is and what a health coach does. How did I become a health coach? So it's a long story, actually. So back in 2017-ish, something like that, I started having all kinds of weird symptoms and, really fatigued all the time, hair falling out, joint pain, muscle pain, just really just all the stuff that didn't make sense. And it was very abnormal for me. So, I started wondering what's going on. Obviously I went to the doctor and they did some blood work and whatnot, and everything came back normal, which to me, I was like, there's something wrong here. They're saying that everything's normal, but I don't feel normal. So I kept kind of just being insistent about finding out what was going on. I started just researching and reading about all this different stuff. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go get my own blood work done, because my doctor wouldn't do the blood work that I asked for. She was like, oh, you're fine. You don't need anything. And everything's normal. And
I never get that.
I was
just do the
very
work.
dismissed.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Ugh, frustrating.
So it was very frustrating. And so I was like, you know what? If she doesn't want to do it, I'm just going to go do it myself. And I went and I got some blood work done. And lo and behold, I had very high antibodies, thyroid antibodies. And so I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense now. And I actually felt relieved that I actually had an answer to what was going on. And so I went back to my doctor and told her what I had done. I'd done the blood work and this is what happened. So she's like, oh, yeah, I could put you on some, low dose Synthroid and, this hormone and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? I really want to just kind of figure things out on my own for a little bit and just look into it. So she said, okay. And so I started really devoting so much time to just researching, reading, attending webinars, just anything I could do to educate myself about this condition, Hashimoto's. And that's what I did for a good year. I just delved into it. And then I started kind of figuring out that food has a lot to do with symptoms and lifestyle. So I started making changes in my diet. I started making changes with regards to stress and trying to really take care of myself. And I'm the kind of person that really likes to say yes to everyone. And so I had to learn that I can't do that all the time. I have to I have to and I think that's a big form of self-care, just identifying that sometimes you have to put up some barriers and you have to kind of take care of yourself first before you overextend yourself. So I started doing all these things and I started feeling so much better. My symptoms started to go away. I just felt a lot better. And so when I went back to get my blood work done about a year later, my numbers had come down significantly. And even my endocrinologist, he was like, I don't know what you're doing, but you don't need to come here anymore. You're doing so well. You don't need to take medicine. Keep doing what you're doing. And so when that happened, I felt so empowered. And I was like, you know what? I'm sure there are other people that are struggling with the same thing I'm struggling with. And how can I help them? So I started thinking, what can I do to help people? And how can I use my story and experience to really motivate them and empower them to do the same thing for themselves. So I looked into all kinds of stuff and I landed on health coaching. It fit really well for me. I felt like it was, once I started getting into it, I really felt like it was my calling. And that's, the rest is history. I've been doing it for 3 years now and I couldn't be happier. I love it.
It's so inspiring to hear when people listen to their bodies, right? When they are intuitive about that. A couple of questions about doing that, because one, I think that's super brave, and people hearing others do that empowers them to do it as well. But it's not easy. How did you know where to go for blood work on your own?
I had to research a lot. That was a lot of time was just researching how to do all this stuff. So we have a local lab called Any Lab Test Now.
We have that too. Yeah, it must be like a chain.
Yeah, it probably is. And so I was like, I looked at their website and I saw the stuff they offered and I was like, let me just do this. And the beauty of it is that you don't have to wait for a doctor to order the labs. You could just pick the one you want. And I, the thing that led me to that too is I was reading so much. I had a hunch that it was something with my thyroid. So I kept reading about that in particular. And I was like, okay, I know the tests that I need to do just from reading all these things. So those are the ones that I chose. And luckily enough, that was exactly what I needed.
Mm-hmm. I had a pretty similar experience in that, man, this must have been about 3 years ago now. I had terrible, terrible acne, all over my cheeks, which was not something that I hadn't experienced that before, and had gone to some different practitioners, just all sorts of things. And that's actually how I found Dr. Cassie Wilder, who's been on the show and who you work with as well. Yeah. And I came to her and I was like, I think that I have some sort of overgrowth, or I think I even maybe thought it was a parasite. Something is in my gut that's affecting my skin. And she was very kind in that, I bet she hears so many theories that people have about their body. Right. But I was right. And it was candida, it was yeast overgrowth. And so we worked together, we got that fixed. And more recently it had some of those same, not the same symptoms, but same feelings of I think something's a little off. And this time it was more related to blood sugar after having a baby, and went back to Cassie and said, hey, I think my blood sugar is kind of high. And she again was like, okay, let's check it. And in fact, it was really high. So I am such a fan of this, but it does, like you said, take some research and some reading and listening to your body. And I guess to listeners that are in the same boat that you and I have been in, don't give up. Don't settle for feeling
No.
like crap. You do not have to do that.
Yeah, and don't let anyone tell you that what you're feeling is normal. And don't let anyone tell you that it's all in your head or you need to be put on antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, because that's something that commonly happens, especially to women. We get dismissed a lot, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it must be hormonal. Oh, you're just getting older. Oh, your hormones are changing. Don't buy that stuff. If you feel that something is off, investigate it, research it, be adamant until you figure out what the answer is and what the root cause is. That's something that if you don't take anything else away from this, that's like my most important message is listen to your body. Don't let anyone else tell you, what to do. You're the expert.
Mm-hmm. Going back to when you were talking about being a health coach, what are some of the goals that people come with to you? What are they saying that they potentially want at the get-go, and maybe they revise that as they're actually working with you?
Yeah, that happens a lot actually. But some common ones are weight loss. That's one that I get a lot. Just being able to implement consistency. I think that's a huge one. A lot of people know what they need to do and they started doing it, but they're not able to stay consistent with their progress. So I think that's the beauty of having someone to check in with and be like, this is what I'm doing. What do I need to do differently? And sometimes it just takes that outside person to come in and like see it from the outside and be able to kind of see it with new eyes and suggest like little things that you can do. And sometimes it's really not that complicated. It's just things that, and a lot of times I hear people say, oh, I never thought of that before. And it's very simple, but because you're in your head all the time, it's hard to kind of step back and see things in a different light. And so that's what I really enjoy. I really enjoy doing that with people, just kind of like looking at things, making some suggestions, seeing if that works, let them try out what the new suggestion is, and then come back and say, did it work? Did it not work? And then go from there and make some more changes until we get to something that feels good and comfortable. But yeah, I would say consistency and time management are the two that I really hear a lot from patients. Yeah.
That's funny. I hear that too, is people are just like, I don't have time to take care of myself. And it's like, oof, I know that feels, and let's reduce how much time it takes to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So when we were talking ideas, right, you had said, I come with some ideas, things that they maybe hadn't thought of before. What type of ideas are you bringing to people? Because I know that a health coach can't prescribe anything and can't diagnose. So what type of suggestions might you give someone who is, say, thinking about, they come with that initial, like, I want to lose some weight. What simple things are you suggesting?
Yeah, so I think that one of the most important things is kind of getting back to the basics. I think that's something that we kind of overlook sometimes, especially with the way social media is, how much exposure we have to so many different things. You get caught up in the trends and you get caught up in like, this person's doing this and this person's doing that. I wonder if I should try this or that. And there's just so much out there. It can become really overwhelming. So like,
Absolutely.
I think getting back to the basics is really important. So those are things like, what are they? How is your sleep? What are your stress levels? What are the sources of stress in your life? How are your relationships, right? What's your schedule like for food? What are you eating? When are you eating? Are you active? Are you physically active? Are you moving? And a lot of times it's like when we start to look at those little things, there's a lot there that comes up. And it's like, for example, with movement, I hear people a lot say like, I'm doing HIIT exercise or workouts and I'm doing like really high intensity kind of things. And it's just not serving them well. It's like, it's draining them. They're exhausted when they're done. They don't feel the energy that you're supposed to get when you're finishing a workout, right? So it's just like, maybe sometimes you just need to tone it down a little bit. Maybe you need to start listening to your body a little bit and figuring out what is it that I actually need. So, and then sometimes going back to the time management, sometimes it's just tweaking how you're spending your time and prioritizing things. Like I do this exercise with patients, like a time management exercise where it makes you kind of look at, what are your non-negotiables? What are the things that are priority to you? And are you actually doing activities that align with those things? Or is it just something that's there, but you're not really making the effort or time to do those things that are going to align with that goal that you have or the thing that's important to you. So sometimes it's really just those little tweaks, and I'm a big fan of baby steps. I don't like to give people like overwhelming things to do. And I think a lot of times we do that to ourselves. We think we have to kind of do all or nothing, right? Like it's like I either commit to this program for like this amount of time or I don't do it at all. Sometimes it's just finding what works in your circumstances in your day. And that's all it takes is just kind of that, a little bit of that tweaking to figure things out.
Mm-hmm. The HIIT conversation is something that like I really resonate with. And it's, you know, we do hear this more, that like you don't want to be doing high intensity every day. But I think in a past life, I thought that was really healthy. I was like, yeah, you know, was teaching yoga 5 days a week, teaching really high intensity classes, and was like, I'm doing it, I'm healthy. And in fact, was really burning out my adrenals, probably messing with my hormones. And to your point about being able to like kind of bounce off your lifestyle to somebody who is a third party. Yeah. You know, it's like, here's what I'm eating. You know, here are the things that I'm eating on a regular basis. I think I'm eating really well. I'm really balanced. And you're actually like, oh, you know what? We need to eat a little bit more protein. And we got to limit some of that like weird sugar that's stuck in some things. And
exactly.
If I hadn't run that by someone else, probably would never have known. It's that idea that we think we're doing all the things. Yeah. And outside help is so helpful. Yeah. It is.
You know, it's interesting because I actually just recently started talking to a nutritionist for myself personally.
Okay.
She had asked me to do a food diary. And, you know, I'm thinking like, oh man, my food diary is going to be so good. Like, I know, like I eat so well and like all this stuff. And it's funny because I was so shocked what she told me. She's like, your meals are really good, but she's like, you barely eat carbs. She's like, you need so much more carbs. And I'm like, oh, like I never even thought of that. And like, you know, I'm doing this every day, but when it comes to yourself, sometimes you do need those outside eyes to kind of see the big picture. And I was like, you know, and she told me like, you need to have a carb with every meal. It doesn't have to be anything processed or anything like that, but there needs to be something. And, you know, once I started doing that, I started feeling so much better. I was like, oh, that was so simple. Like, I didn't even think about that, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's just, sometimes it just takes that outside look, you know?
That is simple. Can you offer some ideas of what good carbs are for people that are like, oh man, carbs? Like, what are they?
Yeah, sweet potatoes is my favorite. So that's one that I always recommend. And by the way, a lot of people don't know that vegetables are carbs.
I know.
So vegetables, they're your best friends. And that's a really good source of carbs. And the good thing about vegetables is they're loaded with fiber, which is really important for our, you know, digestive system. And they're also very low calorie for the most part. So if somebody is worried about like weight gain or they're trying to lose weight, that is a go-to. I would say like that's something you should have with every meal if possible. And then a variety, like just a variety of different vegetables is always a good idea because we know like all the different colors have different benefits. And, you know, it's just, there's so many benefits. I could go on and on about the phytonutrients and like antioxidants and anti-inflammatory effects and like all of that stuff. So I would say vegetables, like let's start thinking about those as carbs. We don't really think about it in that way. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking about more starchy carbs, like I said, sweet potatoes are a really good choice. Even regular potatoes are okay every once in a while. I don't want anyone to think that you can't eat potatoes or something like that. That's a good carb as well, as long as it's balanced with other things that you're eating, like proteins and healthy fats. But even things like rice, and I'm not against white rice. You can have white rice, brown rice, whatever rice you like, as long as it's not taking up the majority of your plate, right? So I think the key to with carbs is that you want to have a portion of your plate that has carbs, but it doesn't have to be the majority. It can be like, I would say a third to a fourth, something like that. Mm-hmm. And you know, like the key here is to balance it out with those proteins and healthy fats so that there's no spike in the blood sugar. That's the important thing to remember.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel about fruit as a carb?
Yeah, fruit is a carb too. And, you know, fruit is one of those things I feel like it's very highly individualized. Everyone reacts differently to fruits. Fruits are healthy. Let's put that first. Like fruits are healthy. They provide lots of fiber, same thing with the vegetables, phytonutrients and antioxidants, like all that good stuff. The problem with fruits and the thing that people are more aware of now is that they do have natural sugars, right? So they definitely can spike your blood sugar. And I think that's something that you have to monitor on an individual basis and just figure out like how much is enough for me and it's not too much. You're not feeling like sluggish and things like that. But what I would recommend is sticking or trying to stick mostly to those fruits that don't have a very high sugar content, like berries are a really good one. Those tend to have lots and lots and lots of nutrients, very nutrient dense, and they don't have a very high sugar content. So berries is always a go-to. But even if you're having things like bananas and grapes are like the ones that have the most sugar in them, even if you're having those, I would say pair them with a healthy fat. So for example, if you're having a banana, you can put some nut butter, you can eat it with some nuts. When you balance it out like that, that blood sugar spike doesn't go up as high. And it kind of balances everything out so that you're not spiking and crashing. So I would keep that in mind. If you are having those, just make sure to eat it with some kind of healthy fat on the side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sugar content, again, like I used to put them in smoothies, put fruit in smoothies, and like my smoothie was mostly fruit, thinking this is so great, and then in the end it was spiking that blood sugar. And so just reducing down to a little bit of frozen berries has made all the difference. Tiny tweak, like you said,
exactly.
So small.
Yep, exactly. And for smoothies in particular, it's a really good idea to add some protein and healthy fats. And examples of that would be if you're using a protein powder. I'm not against it. I'm just I would say for people to be cautious of the kind of the quality of your protein powder. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. Because that can make a huge difference. A lot of people don't know that if you read the labels, there's sometimes a lot of added sugars, a lot of added stuff that you just don't want to be, you just shouldn't have. Another thing is that there are a lot of heavy metals in smoothies. Not in smoothies, in protein powders.
Protein powder. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you want to look for that NSF certification, that tells you that they've tested it for heavy metals and that the level is okay to consume. It's not anything alarming or anything like that. So I would look for that. But even if you're not doing protein powders, you can add things like hemp seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds. Things like you can add whole nuts, you can add nut butter. So those are good ways to get in protein as well without using the protein powder. And then healthy fats are like avocado. Again, nut butters can be healthy fats as well. Just adding those things in, or even using like coconut milk every once in a while sparingly, not too much because it does have a lot of saturated fat, but using that maybe in addition to mixing it with water or mixing it with an almond milk or something like that, you can balance it out. But just adding those things in, you can still have a really nutritious smoothie. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
Do you have any protein powder that you really like?
The one that I like is from Garden of Life. It's that one is one of my favorites. Another one that I was recently introduced to is ProMix. ProMix is good. It's certified, no heavy metals and all of that. But the only problem with that one is it's unflavored. I actually like mine to be flavored, so that's why I like the Garden of Life one.
Just a little sweetness.
Just a little bit. Yeah. So,
I like Kelly LeVeque. She has her Be Well by Kelly ones, which are like, she has a couple different ones. And now she just came out with a vegan option, which is nice because it was beef isolate that I think she was using before. And then now there's a vegan option, which is
okay. I'll have to look into that one. Awesome.
That's a good one. Yeah. It's always good. I'm always looking because they're expensive. Protein powders are expensive. And so having some options out there is so helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So something that I really loved when we first started working together, in your intake form, you had asked so many great questions. One of them, or a few of them, are around faith and spirituality. And obviously that's integral to this show. But I really believe that these areas of our faith and our beliefs are a huge part of our wellness journey. Mm-hmm. And I know that you think this too. Can you share a little bit about those two things interweaving? Like, how do you see them connected?
Yeah, so for me, this is, I love talking about this, and this is something that is very important to me as a Muslim. Our faith really teaches us that our bodies are a trust from God, right? So like we've been given these bodies, we've been entrusted to take care of them. And so what does that mean? That means that, I have the power to decide, what am I going to do with my body? Am I going to support it in a way that is going to make sure that it's healthy and not exposing it to things that are harmful, like, drugs or alcohol or, substances that are just not going to support it and it's going to, have a bad effect on it. Another thing that is really important in my faith tradition is something called tayyib. And tayyib, this is an Arabic word. It means wholesome. So the food that's in our Holy Scripture, food is described as tayyib. Like God commands us to eat things that are tayyib or wholesome. And what does that mean? That means like if you think about it, would I don't know, like a meal from a fast food place be wholesome? Probably not, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have that every once in a while. That's fine. But like for the most part, you want to eat the things that are wholesome, that are going to provide you with what your body actually needs to function optimally. So that's actually something that's ingrained in my faith, and that, choosing those foods that are not only going to provide you with those nutrients, but thinking about where do they come from, right? Like sustainability, and thinking about how we're using the earth, how we're using the animals. Are we environmentally as well? Like are we this whole thing about regenerative farming? That's something that we should definitely be looking into, as far as like how do we grow our food? Where is it? Are we spraying chemicals all over our food? Right. So really trying your best to like choose those foods that are wholesome, and choose the foods that are, the quality of the food is really important. And I think this is, aside from being a part of the faith, I think this is so important for your health, is just realizing, where does the food come from? What has it gone through? What processes have been implemented on these foods? So that's something really important as well. And then another part of that I feel is like the mental aspect as well, right? So like for us, we actually pray 5 times a day. And so the prayer, and it's not a long prayer or anything like that, but I would say like the average prayer takes about 5 minutes or so. And we do this, like we have one in the morning, early morning before the sun comes up. We have one that's like around noontime, one that's around like 3 or 4 o'clock, one that's at sunset, and then one that's at night. So if you think about it, like every stage of the day, we have a prayer. And I feel that these prayers really ground me. And they really help me because part of health and wellness is the mental part too. It's not just the physical part. It's not just what you're eating and how you're exercising. It's really about your mental health as well. Mm-hmm. And so this prayer really, I feel like it grounds me, and it reminds me what my purpose is, right? What am I striving to do? Why am I doing these things? And then we also have a concept called taqwa. Taqwa is roughly translated as mindfulness. And I feel like that, honestly, that has been, for me with my personal health journey, that has been a huge just like motivator, and a part that I feel like it's just everything. Like they say, mindfulness is everything. It really is. Being able to reframe the way you think about things, and trying to always put a positive spin on things, I think is so powerful and so helpful in everything, really. And especially like going back to like, Hashimoto's, and going through that whole health journey. I think it's really important when you're able to focus on positive things, focus on the things that you are doing, that you can do, and not focusing on like, oh my God, this is so bad and this is so negative and it's right. horrible, and it's just really powerful. So we have this concept of taqwa, like I said, mindfulness, and it's essentially in the faith, it means like being aware that God is watching you, right? That He's going to see what you're doing. So you want to really strive to do the things that He wants you to do, and stay away from the things that He doesn't want you to do. So that mindfulness, I feel like it kind of goes across everything that we do. And it's very powerful in my opinion.
I love that. That's beautiful. The prayer, no one's ever really explained the prayers throughout the day before. So it's nice to hear what that cadence is. Mm-hmm. And what a beautiful thing. I often will tell, listeners or clients that praying before meals is like a life hack. I really just gratitude for your food. And Absolutely. Even like you had mentioned, just finding those grounding moments throughout the day. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you talked about praying before meals. We do that as well. And it's not just that, but we have prayers for like literally everything we do. And to me, it's really beautiful because you're able to connect with why you're doing things. It's not just like you're doing things haphazardly. So we do have a prayer before we eat, and it's it's asking God to bless the food that we're going to have. And it's also reminding you that you have this food. It's a blessing. It's not just like, it's just not out of nowhere, right? And then at the end, we also thank God for the food that we had. And one of my favorite prayers is actually a prayer that we have when we wake up in the morning. The first thing that we say when we wake up is, let me see if I can translate this from Arabic in my mind. So it says, basically you're thanking God for waking you up or giving you a new day, after you had been asleep. Because, when you're asleep, it's like you don't feel anything. You're right. Like it's kind of like it's almost like you're dead. Like, because you're completely out, right? So it's like you're thanking God for waking you up, giving you another day, and giving you this opportunity after you had been kind of dead to give you life again. And so I love kind of starting the day off with that prayer, because it reminds you that how blessed we are. And it's something that I've been trying to do. In addition to that prayer, I've been trying to also kind of cultivate that gratitude more and more. And I challenge myself every morning when I wake up, instead of, what I used to do is like think of my to-do list. That's the first thing that came to my mind. And so now I'm trying to challenge that and say, okay, what are the things that I'm grateful for? And I try to bring something up that I hadn't thought about in the past. So it's always challenging, like trying to figure out what is something that I'm blessed with that I haven't thought about before, and bringing that to the surface. It just really makes your day go a lot better when you're starting the day off thinking about that, like how blessed you are. And then all the little small negative things that happen don't really matter anymore when you're starting to think about all the blessings that you have. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love this idea. And too, coming up with different ideas, right? Different ideas, different things you're grateful for every day. We know that there's so much magic right when you come out of sleep. You're still in that sort of meditative, I don't know exactly which brainwave it is, but you're not fully awake yet. And you have this ability to be extremely magnetic coming out of sleep, whether that be thinking about the things that you want for your day, and starting with gratitude, like you had suggested. I mean, goes the entire day. It can shape your whole day.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So for somebody that is struggling to make some positive changes in their life, they're excited about some of the things that we're talking about, whether it be really simple, more movement, more prayer, more water, whatever it is. What suggestions, like what do you tell your clients to help them with making these positive changes and being consistent? I know you talked about starting small. What else do you suggest?
So I think something I had kind of mentioned before is really delving into why things are important to you. Why are you doing this in the first place? Getting clear on that, I think, is really important. Like, why am I doing this? Why is it important to me? What's my motivation? Because guess what? Life happens, and you're not always going to be motivated. You're not always going to be making progress. You're going to have setbacks, and that's completely normal. But like focusing on why is powerful, because when you have those setbacks, you can always come back to why it's important to you, and that kind of helps you get motivated to start again when you have a setback. So that's the first thing I would say is figure out why you're doing something, why it's important to you. That's important. And then the other thing that I can't stress enough is don't compare yourself to anybody but yourself. Don't get into this like this. It's so hard, I know, because it's so hard. We're so bombarded with all of this like fake stuff that we see on social media. It's not all real. Like, no one is going to show you the worst day they had. They're going to show you the prettiest picture and all the good stuff that's happening, and all the stuff that it's real, but it's not the reality of everything that's going on, right? So you're only in competition with yourself. That's what I would say. Don't compare yourself. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody's on a different part of their journey. So it's almost not fair to compare yourself to anyone else, right? Like just focus on your progress and your own, like strive to make each day better than the last. And that's it. You don't have to compare yourself to anyone else. So I would say don't compare yourself. Another powerful one is focus on what you can do and not what you can't do. And this is this is so powerful and essential. Like it almost goes back to like the whole positivity, like just being positive about things. When we focus on whatever we focus on grows, right? So if we're always focusing on, oh, I can't have this food, so I'll tell you, I'm gluten-free and dairy-free. I've been gluten-free and dairy-free for the past 4 years, and this just helps me with my Hashimoto's symptoms. And so I remember when I first started out, I was so bummed because I love bread. Like that is one of my favorite things in the whole world. It's just bread
and cheese, man.
Yeah,
like, how good,
and
like,
cheese.
That's tough.
Yeah, right? It's like it's so good. And
man.
For the longest time when I first started out, I was like, I felt so sad that I was missing out on all this food that I loved, right? But then just one day I was like, you know what? I'm actually, if I think about it from the other perspective, there's so much I'm gaining from not eating these foods. So why am I focusing on that I can't have it? Let me focus on all the like beautiful and nutrient dense things that I am eating to support my body. Once I made that shift, everything changed. I was like, I don't feel like I'm missing out anymore. It's not even worth it for me to eat this because I know it's going to make me feel bad, right? So just those simple mindset shifts, focusing on what you can control, what you can do, is so much more powerful than focusing on all the stuff that's going wrong or all the things that you can't control, all the things that you can't do. So I would say that's a huge one as well. And then, like we mentioned before, baby steps. I think that's very important. Not trying to go to one extreme or the other, just trying to get consistent with those little things and building on them. And once you do that, you look back and you see, oh my God, I've made all this progress, but it doesn't feel like it because you're just taking small steps at a time. And then the last one I would say is get an accountability partner, whether that be your spouse or your friend or your parents or whoever, just someone that you can talk to, or a health coach, that's a good accountability partner too. But just having someone to bounce ideas off of and someone that's going to hold you accountable and check in with you on your progress. So I would say just those simple things can make a really big difference.
Mm-hmm. You've been hearing, I feel like my poor husband, I dragged him into this health journey as well. And I not only do I report to you about myself, but also my husband, but having him be is interested in well-being right now as I am, that helps a lot. That goes so far. And obviously, maybe it's not a husband, it could be somebody else that wants to be there with you, but I love that suggestion. That's so helpful. Yeah.
It makes things a lot easier for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If listeners wanted to start today, they're like, I heard Ashley and Marwa talking and I want to start right now. What are 3 things that you would suggest that they could do to help with their overall wellness and health today?
Very simple 3 things that you can do right now, today, which will not take anything out of your time or anything. I would say number 1, drink more water. Just how much, if you don't drink water at all, drink some water.
Yes. Right now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So drinking water, it makes such a huge difference in the way you feel. It gives you more energy. It detoxes, things out of your body that you don't need. It helps with clear up your skin. The energy piece for me is the biggest thing. It really does give you a lot of energy. And then for people who are struggling with weight loss or want to accelerate their weight loss, drink a lot of water. It makes you full. That's another really good advantage. It keeps you full so you don't feel like you need to snack in between meals and stuff like that. So drink water. That's number 1. Number 2, I would say get moving. Find a way to move. Doesn't matter what it is. If it even means parking far and walking, further from the parking lot to the store, whatever it means. If it means not taking the elevator and going up the stairs, whatever that looks like. If it means playing with your kids outside, if it means just putting on some music and dancing, like whatever it is that you can do to move, I would highly suggest that. They say that the new, what is it called? The new smoking is sitting now. So like smoking used to be like
yes.
that. Have you heard that?
I'd never heard it said like that, but like it's scary.
Yeah, like being sedentary is like one of the worst things that we can do. So like just getting up and moving, even like now, like, the smart watches that we have remind us like, oh, you haven't stand up. You haven't stood up for an hour, so stand up. So like just reminding yourself to move is so powerful. And it not only is good for your physical health, it's good for your mental health too. So
Absolutely.
Just getting up and moving. And I would highly recommend if you can do it outside in nature, if possible, that's even better. Lots of benefits there as well. And then I would say the last thing, find something you enjoy and do it. So anything that brings you joy, whatever that is to you, do that today. Whatever that is. Find something every day that brings you that joy and make sure you implement it. Make sure you do it. It can be anything. It doesn't matter what it is. As long as you feel joyful when you do this thing, make sure you do that. So drink water, move, find joy. Those are the 3 things I would say to start off with. Yeah.
Do you think that it's hard to know what brings you joy? I think some people struggle with this. Like they're so in it. They're so in their day to day. They don't even know what brings them joy anymore.
That's something that I hear from patients all the time. Like when I ask them that question, that's something we explore. A lot of times they struggle to figure out what it is. They don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And that just tells you how, like we're just so sucked up in this like rat race, right? Like we're just like always trying to go to the next thing, trying to go to the next thing, trying to make progress, trying to, check off things off our list, that we don't even know who we are anymore. And I think that's so important, is to like, yes, you need to spend time figuring out what that is. Like, and I actually have an exercise that I go through with patients. It's called the joy exercise. And we kind of go through and they kind of reflect on when's the last time you actually experienced joy. And it helps you kind of go back and think about those times and situations and things that were present in that moment that made you feel that joy, and kind of reconnect to that. And so I feel like that's a really important thing to do, is just, if you don't know what it is, spend some time just journaling or thinking about it, and hopefully something will come up for you, and, really focus on that, because it can make a huge difference in the way you feel.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be big things. Like,
no.
I always use this example about like that first cup of coffee in the morning, like first thing, that brings me significant joy. That's like
awesome.
And it's simple. And, if we can just program a few of those things in our day, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and like you said, it doesn't have to be something huge. It doesn't have to be like a whole experience or something. It could be, like you said, that cup of coffee. For me, it's opening my windows in the morning and sitting next to the window and feeling the sun on me. That brings me joy. So it can be, it's so simple, but it's just whatever makes you feel happy. Make sure you do that every day. Yeah.
So fun. I love this. So I'd love to know, what are your self-care practices? Obviously, prayer is one of them. What else do you like to do?
For me, like I said, sitting in the sun, that's a huge one for me. I love just kind of like starting the day, looking outside, watching the sunrise, and just getting that energy boost, I guess, from the sun. That's one. My quiet time is really important to me too. So I feel like on days that I'm able to wake up early, kind of just get my thoughts in place and kind of connect with myself, do my prayers. Just that time is really important to me. So that quiet time, that alone time. Yoga is another one that I really enjoy. I love doing yoga. Yoga to me is like therapy, honestly. It's so grounding, and so like the breath work, all of that stuff is really, really like, it makes me feel like a whole new person. And I always tell myself, I'm like, why I don't do this more often? I don't understand. Like, every time I do, I'm like, why do I not spend more time doing this? So that's one thing that I feel yoga is a great one. I love being outside in nature, walking. Like, that's something that I feel like if I don't do that every day, there's something missing. So I like being outside as much as possible, and just kind of enjoying time with my family, things like that. Those are all kind of, my self-care things. Yeah.
And you have a big family. I mean, it's not like it's just you solo at home doing these self-care routines. Can you just share with listeners for perspective, like, about your family?
Yeah, so I have 4 kids. I'm married. I have 4 kids. My oldest is graduating high school this year, and my youngest is in 2nd grade. So I have a girl and 3 boys, so I'm really busy, really, really busy. And it shows that, anybody can do this. Even if you're busy, you can spend time, you can carve out that time. And I feel like the more you do it, the more you realize how important it is. So I feel like now, I remember a time when my kids were younger, I would feel so guilty when I took out time for myself. It would make me feel like I'm not being a good mom if I'm like taking this time to do something for me. But now I realize that if I don't take the time to do something for me, I'm not going to be the best mom that I can be. I'm not going to be the best wife. I'm not going to be the best daughter, friend, health coach, whoever, all these roles, right? So like now I realize that it's an essential part of feeling well and feeling well-rounded, is just taking that time for myself. And that's why now you understand why quiet time is important to me, because it's always crazy. It's always crazy here. So having that alone quiet time is really, really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then last question, what kind of yoga do you do it at home? Like, do you do it on YouTube? Do you go to a studio? What do you like to do?
So before the pandemic, I used to go to a studio. But ever since then, I have not gotten back in. So I do it at home. Sometimes it looks like basically like I'm sitting quietly and I just feel like my body needs to move in that way. And so I'll just do some poses or stretches. And sometimes, most of the time, I'll follow along on YouTube. I have one in particular that I really like, Yoga with Adrienne. I like her a lot.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I feel like I connect with her, and I love her practices. And I love the fact that her practices are not super long, because I don't always have like an hour to do yoga. And if I have 15 minutes, I will definitely do that. So I like how it's flexible, and I can do it at home and whenever I get a chance, basically.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Oh, Marwa, you're such a gem. I've learned so much from you. I'm so glad that we've been connected.
Thank you so much. You've been awesome.
Thank you.
I've been, like it's been great, a pleasure to work with you as well. And thank you for having me on here. It's been really great. I love all of these topics. So this is like my cup of tea right here.
I love it. I love it. Can you just share with listeners where they can find you if they want to learn more about you, maybe work with you in the future? Give us the details.
Sure. Yeah, so I have my website is my private practice is called Figs and Olives Wellness. And so that's figsandoliveswellness.com. And you can find me on Instagram. My handle is Health Coach Marwa. So that's where you can find me. Follow me. You'll have, be exposed to some really cool stuff that I talk about, some tips and recipes and self-care and just kind of everything we've talked about today.
Awesome. And shout out to Minneapolis Integrative Medicine, who I get to work with, and that's how I made my way to Marwa, and she's been such a help to me. So thanks for connecting us. Love it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashley. I appreciate it.
Thank you.